Welcome to The Explainer. So what happens when an entire industry, literally millions of businesses, gets shut down overnight? Today, we're going to look at how China's restaurant sector faced that exact crisis and how their story of survival might just change the way we all eat forever.
So, early 2020. This number says it all. A staggering 43.1%. That's the drop in revenue for China's entire restaurant industry. I mean, it was a shutdown so complete and so sudden that it basically forced a decade of change into just a few months. Unbelievable.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get a real sense of just how devastating this shutdown was. Then we'll look at the one lifeline that kept the industry afloat. From there, we've got 4 incredible stories of survival and innovation. And finally, we'll unpack what this all means for the future of dining. Let's get into it. All right, first up, the shutdown. I want you to picture your favorite city street. You know, the one that's always buzzing with people and restaurants. Now, imagine it completely empty, silent. All the lights are off, every restaurant door is locked. That was the shocking new reality for literally millions of businesses. And the impact? It was almost total. I mean, look at this. 95% of restaurants saw their sales just plummet. But look at that tiny little slice, that 5%. They somehow managed to hold their ground or even grow. The big question is, how on earth did they do that? And here's a really crucial piece of the puzzle. Unlike in a lot of other countries, there was no big government bailout, no direct subsidies to keep businesses afloat. It was simple. You either adapt or you disappear. Survival came down to pure self-reliance, creativity, and the ability to pivot, and pivot fast. So, with their backs against the wall, the entire industry made one single massive pivot. They went all in on food delivery. For a while, it wasn't just an option, it was the only way to reach customers who were all stuck in their homes. And to understand this transformation, you have to know this term, waimai. It's the Chinese word for food delivery. But this wasn't just a simple convenience like getting a pizza. It was already a massive part of city life, and it was about to become an absolutely essential service. And this slide just perfectly captures the scale of the shift. Think about it. Before the crisis, only about 15% of restaurants would say delivery was their main thing. But then, almost overnight, that number shoots up to 78%. It went from being a side gig to the only game in town. But you know, this lifeline, it came at a price. A pretty serious one, actually. To get on these platforms and reach customers, restaurants had to give up a huge chunk of their revenue. We're talking around 20% commission on every single sale. And maybe even more importantly, they lost that direct connection, that relationship with the people who are actually eating their food. Okay, so let's get into some real-world examples. Because the real success stories weren't just about signing up for a delivery app. No, they came from the restaurants who got creative, the ones who innovated on top of the platform in really clever, unexpected ways. First up, we've got a fast food chain called Nanchangxiang. Now, they were already doing delivery, so they had a head start. But what they did was lean in hard on safety. They got certified as a safe restaurant to build trust when, everyone was worried about health. And the result? Their delivery sales just exploded. Then there's White Pojia. This was a more traditional restaurant, and they were saved by a really smart move they'd made before the crisis. They had created a whole separate sub-brand focused just on delivering high-quality duck. So while their main dining rooms were all closed, this delivery-only business actually thrived. Okay, this one's my favorite, the hot pot chain Xiaolongkan. They had a huge problem. You can't exactly deliver a giant, boiling pot of soup. So what did they do? They completely reinvented their product. They created a DIY hot pot kit for people to cook at home. And then they used live-streamed e-commerce to sell it, selling over 10,000 kits in a single day. Just incredible. And for our last story, there's Chayan USA. This was a super trendy tea shop that built its whole brand on being exclusive, on having these long lines that created hype. They avoided delivery, but out of pure necessity, they were forced to pivot. And what they found was a massive untapped demand for their tea. They were way more popular than they ever realized. So what's really important to get here is that these weren't just temporary fixes, right? These weren't just Band-Aids. These frantic, creative adaptations actually triggered a deep, permanent change in the industry's DNA. It basically fast-forwarded the future. Yeah, the crisis basically shoved the entire sector into what people are now calling an OMO model. That stands for online merge offline. Suddenly, a restaurant wasn't just a physical place you go to anymore. It was also a digital storefront, a logistics center, and even media company all rolled into one.
And make no mistake, this change is here to stay. A full 70% of the restaurants that were forced to adopt waimai, food delivery, during the crisis say they're going to keep it as a core part of their business, even after things get back to normal.
And you can see it in the market data too. Before all this happened, the growth in food delivery was actually starting to slow down. But now, it was projected to just re-accelerate, growing by an incredible 36% in just 1 year.
But what's interesting is the future probably isn't going to be one size fits all. We're likely to see a split. Small restaurants might double down on being those cozy, traditional community hubs. Medium-sized spots, they might just vanish from the street and become delivery-only ghost kitchens. And the big chains, they'll probably use delivery for scale while turning their physical restaurants into these unique, must-see experience venues.
And all of this brings us to our final takeaway. And it's maybe the most important lesson from this whole incredible transformation. It's not just about what's on the plate anymore. Right. The next big battle in the restaurant world isn't just about who has the best food or the best prices. It's about data. It's about relationships. See, the delivery platforms, they own that connection to the customer. And for the big brands, winning back that direct connection, well, that's the whole ballgame now. And so that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This crisis has fundamentally challenged the very idea of what a restaurant is. It's forced everyone to ask a really simple but profound question. If your favorite meal can come directly to your door, what is a restaurant even for?